Welcome to Golf and the Good Life, your guide to golf travel across the pond. I'm DJ Jones, he is Connor Evers, and today we are going to cover some of the key differences between golf trips to, say, Scotland and Ireland versus destinations here in the US. But first up, Connor, great to see you. We have arrived, at least as we're recording this, at our favorite week of the year. How are things up at H&B HQ?
Deej, it's a very exciting week here at HQ, as you said, due to the Open Championship week. So it's been really fun to see some of the content that the golf creators have made in Northern Ireland and more specifically to Royal Portrush. And like every time I open up my Instagram or LinkedIn or any type of social media platform, it's something about the Open or Royal Portrush. So it's very, very fun, very, very exciting. And when this episode does come out, we'll know who wins the 153rd Open Championship at Royal Portrush. So looking forward to this week. And as always, shout out to groups that are about to travel from Baltimore Country Club, Dunwoody Country Club, Gator Creek Golf Club, and the Country Club at DC Ranch. So shout out to those groups that are about to travel on expeditions across the pond. And I have another fantastic announcement. Congratulations to Greg Lanford, who just had a hole-in-one this past week at Cruden Bay on the third hole. They had a fantastic time and they're looking forward to another expedition overseas. Looks like next year. It was kind of exchanging emails with Greg yesterday, and it sounds like he hit driver. They had really no clue where the ball was. It is a blind kind of hole there, and 1, 2, and 3 kind of leads straight out from the clubhouse. And like I said, hit his drive blind and didn't really know where it was, and checked in the bunker, couldn't find it, and checked the hole, and it was there, and the picture was amazing. It sent a couple in. It looked like they had just a chamber conference day there at Cruden Bay. I mean, sunny. We'll probably post the picture on our social media or our newsletter. The gent had a bucket hat, cigar in mouth, going down and getting the ball out of the cup. So driver on the par 4. He also did share, this is his second hole-in-one with a driver as well. He's had 3, the other one more traditional with a 5-iron, but he's had 2 hole-in-ones on par 4s. So I told him to share some of that luck with me because I've never had one. But just congratulations to him. It's I believe our first one of the year from members overseas. So just I thought I'd share that as well for our folks.
Yeah, what a story. And what a hole to do it on. I mean, the third hole at Cruden Bay is the quintessential Scottish short par 4. It's totally blind, like Connor said. And you just kind of just hit and go find it when you get up there. And what a roller coaster it must have been to be searching, thinking that it's a lost ball scenario, and the pit that we all know when you're walking around looking for a ball that you can't find. That anxiety starts going. And then you look in the hole and it's there. I mean, what a moment. And you're right, the picture was absolutely awesome. So yeah, shout out Greg Lanford, way to go. Hopefully we got more coming. We may have had others throughout the season. We haven't heard of any others. And I will say that I think we're a little behind our normal pace. I feel like at this time of the year, we have usually had 3, 4, 5 hole-in-ones reported to us, and this is the first that we've heard of. But yeah, you're right, Connor. You and I need some of that luck. 70 some odd years of combined golf between the two of us, and not one to show for it. But moving back to today's episode, we are going to cover some of the key differences between golf travel to, say, Scotland and Ireland and destinations that you might visit here in the US. And the reason that we're covering this is, quite frankly, the success of your trip largely can depend on understanding these differences, and helps to align expectations and so forth so that you know what you're getting into, because there are some very key things that are different. Connor, as one of our expedition planning managers, you are, of course, working through this stuff every single day. What is the key on your end when it comes to tackling these differences?
For sure. I think you said a really good word there, and that's expectations, especially when it comes to a group that's coming to us for the first time. And they've done the resorts in the United States. They've done Bandon, they've done Stream Song, Sand Valley, just throwing a few out. I'm probably missing a bunch, but they know what the kind of expectations and how things work here in the States. And sometimes it's no fault of their own, but they think that's going to be the same once they travel overseas. And frankly, it's different. It's a lot different. And today we're going to talk a lot about that. But like I said, a lot of things, what it comes down to is communication amongst the group through your expedition planning manager, especially the group captain. Group captain has a big role in this of kind of understanding the differences of what it's like here compared to there and communicating that amongst the group members so everyone's kind of on the same page. A lot of these things on paper, when you're reading them in a proposal, it's just like, oh, that's what it is. But a lot of times it's understanding the big differences. And I'm looking forward to today's episode of talking about that, just so everyone's kind of, like I said, on the same page, understanding how it works and seeing the differences.
Well, and as we've talked just on so many different topics here on the podcast, communication ends up being the foundation of so many of them, whether it's between you as the planner and the group captain or the group captain to the rest of the group. I mean, like you said, there's a big responsibility to make sure that that information gets disseminated to everyone on board because, and we run into this every single day. Group captain is aware of X, Y, or Z, and it maybe doesn't filter down to the rest of the group. And so the rest of the group is like, whoa, wait a minute. What do you mean, whatever scenario it might be? And we're going to cover some of those here in a minute. So you're right. You just cannot over communicate these things when it comes to, like you said, aligning those expectations. But really, I think that as we kind of proceed through this, there are three sort of biggies, if you will. And then there are several other smallish, minor differences, but all of which can add up in the end and impact your overall experience. So, Connor, why don't you lead us off with that first big one right out the gate?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, a lot of our folks, especially like I said, when they're coming to us for the first time, they're used to the resorts here in the States, we'll call them the abandoned dunes, the stream songs, as I said, and they're thinking it's going to be the same process when going overseas, and it's way different. I mean, the big thing is all these clubs overseas, if we're just talking about, just say Southwest Ireland, for example. So Old Head, Waterville, Ballybunion, Tralee, Dooks, those are kind of your main five down in that area. I know Doonbeg and Lahinch is further up north, but for the sake of conversation, we're just going to include those. They all work independently. They don't work the same. So at Bandon, you book in for the entire week and you've got Bandon Dunes, Bandon Trails, and you've got all the other courses kind of there. Whereas all these work independently. They also have different rules and regulations when it comes to visitors. For example, Tralee is only open Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays for visitors, whereas Old Head is open Monday through Sunday for visitors, usually. And again, these are all private clubs as well. So folks don't understand that they're not, I mean, yeah, we're blessed as Americans and just visitors of the like that we're able to go and access these clubs. And that's kind of how these clubs work overseas. It's the cool thing of traveling over to GB and I is we're able to access them. But it's not so much that you can call up and make a tea time the day of or what have you. So it's kind of learning when all these courses are available and kind of navigating the routes to kind of get the best possible routing of the trip. So it's like I said, it's way different comparatively to calling up Stream Song and booking a week-long trip comparatively to Ireland or anywhere in Scotland or England. It's a lot more conducive in getting kind of the courses you want on the same trip.
Yeah, I mean, so many moving parts. You're talking, like you said, however many clubs, they're all working independent of one another. They're all going to have different days that they accept visitors. Some within the day itself, they're going to have different time slots that vary
Yeah.
from one day to the next. Having someone with that insight and expertise can really obviously help pull it all together for you. So, for my first one, I'm going to cover some accommodation related things. And as a former hotel guy, it only makes sense for me to take this topic. The first thing you've got to know that's different overseas is that many of the hotels, the rooms themselves, are considerably smaller than what we're accustomed to here in the States. And oftentimes, because the hotels themselves are older, historic properties within the same room category, you can get some pretty wide variation in terms of the size of the room, the shape, the layout, the furnishings, and so forth. And that can sometimes create a little bit of angst, I guess. Maybe that may not be the right word, but a little bit of angst within the group because one person might get just a very basic room that's laid out as you might expect, and then somebody else might get a room that's considerably bigger and has a fireplace and maybe a separate little seating area or whatever it is. And yet the hotel views those rooms or might view those rooms as the exact same room category. So you have to kind of know going in that there's going to be kind of a wide range of, or a little bit of a disparity between the two. Not all the time, Some of the newer properties or the rooms are a little more uniform, but anytime you're working with an older hotel that has been more or less retrofit into a hotel, those rooms are going to vary. From an H&B perspective, we are going to try to communicate to the hotels, hey, if you've got one particular room within the block of rooms for this particular group that is a little bit better, maybe try to slide that one to the group captain. But listen, it doesn't always happen that way. It doesn't shake out. Sometimes in terms of availability, it can't happen. And we do everything we can to line that up, but it's kind of up to the hotels. And they are obviously going to do their best to align that for you. But within that as well, we're going to talk a little about bedding. And, like Connor said in the beginning of the episode, like you look at it on paper and it's like, why are we talking about bedding? Is he really going to talk about beds? Well, yes, because if you are planning to share a room in particular, let's say it's two friends that are sharing a room, this is really where it can come into play because typically the bedding in hotel rooms overseas for twin occupancy is either a room with two single or two twin size beds. Rooms with two doubles or two queens are quite rare. And the other biggie is that, again, because those rooms are often quite a bit smaller than we're used to here in the States, those beds are often quite a bit closer than we might be expecting. I've seen them as close as a foot apart. So you've just got to kind of know going into it that the big spacious rooms for two people sharing may not exist and it might be a little tighter quarters than you're accustomed to. And so maybe that single supplement that you turned down at the beginning of the planning process is all of a sudden worthwhile. The last thing on this is that king size beds are quite rare as well. True king size beds. Oftentimes, what they're doing in hotels overseas, not just in Scotland and Ireland, but Europe sort of as a whole, is they're taking those two single or twin beds. It's called a zip link. They're zipping them together and they're basically making one more or less king size bed. Not really a big deal unless you're planning on sleeping diagonally across the bed, but it's something that can catch some people by surprise. So the last thing that ties this together is that this is where the vetting by either yourself or your golf travel company is vitally important because candidly, there are a lot of room categories at hotels overseas that we simply won't use for groups that are sharing rooms. Too small, beds are too close together, whatever it might be. And so if you are planning to share a room overseas, as petty as it might sound, you need to ask about the bedding.
You definitely do. And I would say out of everything that we're going to talk about in this episode, this is the most important one. And again, the funny part about it is it probably seems the least important one when you're looking at a proposal or just thinking about this because you're excited about the golf or where you're going to drink in the pubs or anything like that. It's going to be the least important one, but it is going to be the biggest stark difference comparatively to what you're used to here, especially if it's your first time on an expedition overseas or even in Europe for the first time, because it's very much the same, not only in GB&I, but it's very much the same throughout all of continental Europe too. Our next one up is distance. And when we say that, we're meaning how long you're traveling from point A to point B. I'll go back to my good friends at Bandon Dunes. If you're staying on property or even in the town of Bandon, you're looking at either a very, very short 2-minute drive, you're staying on property, or about a 10-minute drive if you're staying in the town of Bandon to all the golf courses there. Again, that's very much the same throughout a lot of resorts here in the States. And I'll pick on my good friends over in Southwest Ireland again. If you're looking at going in that area, some folks, especially if they're wanting to play from Old Head all the way up to Lahinch and every course in between, some groups want to stay in one hotel for the entire time. And that's what they think that can happen because they see it on a map and they say, oh, it's only 40-minute drives from point A to point B, and it's not the case. Usually from a trip like that, you're looking at lodging down in Kinsale for Old Head. You're looking at lodging in the Killarney area for that kind of cluster of courses there. And you're looking at lodging a little bit more north for kind of the Lahinch area as well. So that's 3 hotel spots. So I think really what it comes down to from this perspective of driving distance wise is, again, transparency and communication amongst the group, and kind of let the group know that that's what the case is going to be. And if groups say, hey, we do not want to do that, we want to stay in one hotel for the entire trip, then that may not be a good example of what you might want to do. some other trips that if you're staying in one area, a lot of them are getting a lot more popular of just staying in one area. So that would be say St. Andrews for the entire time. And your longest drive is probably going to be Carnoustie, which is 40 minutes away, and everything else is a lot closer or walking distance from your hotel. Again, it's a lot of transparency, a lot of communication, seeing what's important to the group and understanding kind of your drive times from point A to point B and kind of seeing what fits the group best.
That's great stuff. And so, in terms of the big three that we talked about, we're talking private clubs versus resorts, the accommodation differences, and the distance to the clubs. Those are kind of the key three. There are several other, maybe a little bit more minor differences that will still impact your experience and things that you just kind of got to know going into it. First one of those comes down to caddies. Now, just like on this side of the Atlantic, caddies overseas are independent contractors. They can't be guaranteed. You can put in a request or what have you, but they're independent contractors. And so there's no real way for the golf club to guarantee that. No difference there. I mean, that's pretty much the same across the board. The big difference in terms of caddies overseas versus, say, the resorts on this side of the pond is that the caddies are often going to be members of the club you're playing. And what that brings to your experience is just absolutely incredible. I mean, you might have the former club champion on your bag, you might have the current club captain, you might have some of the youth from the junior program sometimes, believe it or not, and yet they often bring so much enthusiasm and what have you to the day. The point being is that you've invested pretty heavily in this trip. The caddies are going to bring so much to your time overseas. That's not one area where you want to try to capture some savings. Have that caddy on your bag because not only are they going to help your scorecard, but what they're bringing in terms of their knowledge about the club and their passion for their clubs, it really just bleeds into everything that you'll have that day and is worth every penny when it's all said and done.
It's a good point. And next one up is rental vehicles. Now, I will say a lot of our members that travel with us do take a driver host due to the experience, having to drive themselves. List goes on. We have multiple other podcasts about that, but we're here to talk about the differences. And I would say the big difference is the size of the vehicle. Cars and SUVs across the pond are much smaller than what we have here. And you may be looking at online if you're trying to book this and attempting to book this and seeing it's like, oh, that's going to fit and it'll work for us. Well, not the case. For a group of two, we will put a group in a full-size automatic sedan vehicle. And groups of 3 or 4, we'll put them in a van. And usually this is actually a 9-passenger van and the seats in the back go back. So there's a lot of room for luggage. And speaking of luggage, that's kind of the reasoning why. Again, traveling over, you're going to have your golf clubs and a golf travel bag. You're going to have probably a checked bag. You're going to have a carry-on and then maybe a personal item. So you're looking at, 3 or so bags per person. I mean, it adds up from a space perspective. So some of our groups may think, especially if you're a group of 3 or 4, come back to us and we're proposing and talking about it. So that we just need a small sedan. And it's not the case because of the luggage. So we kind of err on the side of larger. And again, it becomes just the comfort size of things. And I would say the other big difference is, hey, you're driving the other side of the road and steering wheels on the other side of the car too. So maybe an obvious, but I throw that in there too. But yeah, like I said, they're smaller and prepare for that. But I would say if you are attempting to book this on your own or just working with a golf travel agency, make sure that car is big enough for your luggage because again, European cars are smaller.
If you take your stuff and kind of lay it out, so your golf travel bag, your suitcase, your carry-on, maybe a laptop bag, and then think that through and try to multiply it times 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
That gives you kind of the image of exactly how much space you're talking and just for your gear. So it's funny that you say that about defaulting upwards to a van because when I think of a group of 3, it's like, well, surely an SUV or something would work, but no, I mean, by the time you lay those seats down and get all the stuff in there, you're eating up the space where the third person needs to sit. So that makes total sense. I hadn't really considered it that way. Kind of along the same line of thinking, restaurants overseas are also considerably smaller, just like hotels and rental cars. And the popular places are going to book out well in advance. So you've got the combination where you've got a smaller dining room, peak demand at some of these places. If you are traveling as a group of 8 or bigger, don't sleep on dining reservations is really what it comes down to. It's one thing to kind of leave some flexibility for a night or two, but you don't want to be scrambling every single night to find places to eat. And that's very much what you could run into, especially if you're in, say, St. Andrews in July or around graduation time or whatever it might be. You want to have some plans in place. The other is splitting the check is just not really a thing. What they will do is, let's say you've got a party of 8, they will take the bill and divide it 8 ways evenly and charge your cards the same amount across the board. But in terms of an itemized individual check, just not a thing. So you either need to have one person that just pays and you all sort it out amongst yourselves, or you have them essentially split the bill 8 ways and just have an understanding that nobody orders Macallan 30 unless everybody is ordering Macallan 30. Don't be that person. Otherwise, you might not find yourself on the next trip. But Connor, we're kind of wrapping this one up. We could kind of go on and on with some of these differences. Obviously, we've only hit sort of the big ones. Any others that you think we need to add before we call it a day?
Yeah, I think your one there of splitting the check is a good one. One I would have added. It's a big difference, and it's a little odd, but you kind of figure it out once you get through the trip. But kind of some quick different ones is the power sockets. So they're going to have different outlets overseas than what we have here. Maybe an obvious, but you're going to need a power converter. You can get one pretty inexpensive, 15, $20 on Amazon, a good solid one that you'll need. Language is different, obviously English, but sometimes one, it's hard to understand the accent. But two, they kind of say a few different words. We'll say the boot or the trunk, or quid instead of we say bucks, or pence is our cents for money wise. The petrol station, gas station, we like to say it, but petrol station. Back to kind of the rental car thing, filling up petrols is a little different. You kind of go out and you just kind of fill up your card and you go inside and pay for it. You actually don't put your credit card or card in the actual pump. You pay for it after. So they trust you a little bit more over there than what they do here. So those are kind of my differences and just kind of some quick hitters.
That's a good one about the pay at the pump. No
Mm,
matter how many times I've been over, I still don't know what to do when I pull up
yep.
to a gas station overseas. It's like, what do I do here? Do I go pay first, or what year is it? I think the one that I'm going to add that just came to mind as you were running through those is ordering at the bar. If you are having dinner in a pub, don't be surprised if a server doesn't come around and say hello and take your order. There is going to be a little coin-sized number on your table. Get your number, go up to the bar, place your order there, and you pay in advance as
Hmm.
well. So I think it's a nice thing because, again, you're not chasing down trying to pay the check at the end of the meal. But these were some good ones to cover. That's going to kind of wrap up, if you will, the what's different about golf travel across the pond. If you have any questions, send us a DM on social media, or you can email us, golf@haversham.com. Or that third method, you can hop on to haversham.com/podcast. Record your question for us there. We'd love to include you on a future episode. But that's going to draw this one to a close. We will be back again soon with another episode. But until then, we wish you plenty of golf at its finest and life at its best.